Welcome to Monday Mercy. Micah 6:8 says, "What does the Lord require of you? To act justly and to love mercy and walk humbly with your God." And Luke 6:36 says, "Be merciful just as your Father is merciful." A few verses before that it says, "If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them." So I want us to think briefly about how God's mercy affects our meetings when we come together as church family, and what message we're giving up in those Sunday gatherings to those coming in. We may have a great, vibrant mercy ministry such as a food shop, street pastors, pregnancy crisis centre, or school pastors, and be really seeing God move as people are open and desperate to see his mercy in their own lives. But what happens when those we meet come to our churches for the first time? Do they experience the same mercy they have in that focus ministry? Or do they find shiny, happy people all looking like they have perfect lives, but who don't bother to speak to them? Who are so involved in their own little groups of like-minded, similar people that they either don't notice new people or they avoid them if they seem different to them. It's so important we extend hospitality within our meetings as well as outside of them. And it's also vital that people hear how we are receiving God's mercy on a daily basis ourselves. Talking about our struggles and how God meets us in them is so important. This isn't a comfortable thing at all, but I don't think it's meant to be. I've been in many a meeting when God has nudged me to go and share about something that I'm in the middle of struggling with. Not to put the focus on me, but because it opens up a sense of safe community. People feel able to share about their own struggles when someone from the front mentions their own. It's actually an act of mercy to be open and vulnerable. Because we all face difficulties, so it's silly to pretend that we don't. Jesus himself said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I've overcome the world." That's John 16:33. Obviously, we need to be wise about how we actually do this, but God may well call us to be much more open than perhaps we might naturally want to be. I found that in my own life and ministry. 2 of the books that I've written have starting points in probably the most shameful part of my own journey. And yet God, in his great mercy and grace, has released me from that shame and encouraged me to share in order to remind others of God's love and care for them. And I found each time that I've done that, when I've told my story in gatherings, people have responded. And that's the case too, week by week, when myself or others share testimony of God's grace, love and mercy, both in times of breakthrough, but also, and I think this can be even more powerful, while still in the midst of the storms of life. We need to be real with one another. The truths about who God is don't change, even as our circumstances do. 1 Timothy 1:16 says, "I received mercy for this reason, that in me as the foremost, Jesus Christ might display his perfect patience as an example to those who were to believe in him for eternal life." Being honest about how God shows us mercy, even in the midst of pain, or when we're foolish or sinful, can draw others to him. And there's another aspect to this which came to me when I was reminded of the woman in Luke 7. She's the woman who entered Simon's house, wet Jesus' feet with her tears, dried them with her hair, and then extravagantly poured perfume on them. How would we respond if someone entered our church meeting and did something to show how much they understand God's grace and mercy, but if their worship was different and uncomfortable for us? I have a feeling we may be as indignant as those in that house were, that a sinner had the audacity to do such a thing. Verse 39 says, "When the Pharisee who'd invited him saw this, he said to himself, 'If this man were a prophet, he would know who's touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner.'" But in his home, Jesus' feet had been left dirty, and Jesus went on to rebuke him and forgive the woman's sins. In our efforts to run our meetings in just the way that we and regular members have got used to, have we forgotten to prepare our hearts and invite Jesus into our meetings well? Or have we symbolically left him with dirty feet, dishonouring him by putting our focus on the way we do things, perhaps keeping an eye on the clock all the time to ensure we keep within the allotted time frame? It's so good to take a few moments to really reflect on God's mercy afresh every day. It can be a truth we know so well it doesn't actually affect us that much because we've got so used to it. We need to allow our hearts to be softened to respond and then take action from that place. Then we can show mercy as we realise we ourselves have been shown it.